All right, let's jump right into this executive briefing. Today, we're going to explore exactly how to evaluate a mobile app development partner who is actually capable of surviving Houston's extreme industrial realities. Because, as we'll see in just a bit, building an app for a local coffee shop, that is a completely different universe than building one for the energy capital of the world. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First up, the Houston app landscape. Second, industry-specific demands. Third, evaluating technical expertise. Fourth, the cost of cheap builds. And finally, your decision framework. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Houston app landscape. Moving way beyond the pitch deck.
Look, we've got to address the elephant in the room right off the bat. Standard, consumer-grade apps are literally destined to fail here. Most developers build for stable environments, right? Where the absolute biggest disaster is, a slow Wi-Fi connection at a cafe. But in Houston, your users are wearing thick gloves in the blistering 110-degree heat of the Permian Basin. Or they're relying on software for OSHA compliance while hauling hazardous materials down I-10. The stakes are just incredibly high. This contrast is wild when you really think about it. Imagine a developer who is used to building restaurant ordering apps trying to engineer something for the oil field. Consumer apps just assume a reliable connection and a comfortable user in a stable environment. But the Houston enterprise reality? Zero cellular signal, 110-degree heat, and mandatory regulatory compliance like OSHA and HIPAA. If your app crashes out there, it's not a minor annoyance, it's a massive operational and legal failure.
Moving right along to Section 2, industry-specific demands. What real scalability actually looks like.
So because of this unique landscape, you end up with non-negotiable requirements across Houston's major sectors. The crucial takeaway here is that scalability in this market isn't just about spinning up more server infrastructure. Actually, scratch that. It's multidimensional. It's about handling enormous operational datasets from IoT sensors. It's layering in complex regulatory changes as configuration rather than entirely new code. And it means growing your geographic footprint without triggering a massive, super expensive architecture rebuild at every single step. Whether you're operating out of the Texas Medical Center or running logistics down in the Port of Houston, your development partner absolutely must engineer specific compliance requirements directly into Sprint 1. These are table stakes. Energy, you need offline-first architecture for remote sites. Healthcare, strict HIPAA compliance and FHR R4 integration. Logistics apps must actually enforce hours of service, not just display them. And fintech requires idempotent transaction architecture so a dropped connection doesn't duplicate a trade. Like I said, non-negotiable.
Section 3 now, evaluating technical expertise. Basically, presentation versus actual production. Okay, we are entering the absolute core of our framework here. How to instantly spot red flags by contrasting generic marketing fluff with genuine production engineering depth. Take this question, for example. This is a critical make-or-break question every energy executive should ask a potential vendor to test their field deployment experience. If they stumble here, they simply haven't built for Houston.
A presentation-capable vendor will usually give you a really generic answer, like, oh, we just use local storage and sync later. Honestly, that leads straight to data duplication and lost records. But a production-capable vendor, they're going to name the specific stack required for extreme offline environments. They'll bring up OpsQLite, write-ahead queues, and concurrent conflict resolution. That right there is exactly what you need to hear. Now, if you're a healthcare leader, maybe over in the medical center, this question is a total game changer. It instantly separates the developers who actually understand the law from those who just throw around buzzwords to secure a contract. The difference is literally night and day. The presentation firm just says, yeah, we take it seriously. But the production-capable team, they are giving you the exact legal subsections like 164.312, and they'll detail the architectural protocols, stuff like 15-minute auto log-offs and immutable audit controls that are absolutely required to keep patient data legally secure. And let's say your vendor is going with cross-platform React Native, which, by the way, makes total sense for managing huge fleets of different devices. Well, they absolutely must be using the 2026 new architecture. They need to be talking about JSI to eliminate processing bottlenecks, fabric renderers, and turbo modules. Why does this matter? To make sure complex field inspection forms don't just freeze up and crash on an Android device that's baking in the summer heat.
All right, Section 4, the cost of cheap builds, or as we should probably call it, total cost of ownership.
Let's pivot to the balance sheet for a second, because a low initial hourly rate on a proposal almost always hides a devastating total cost of ownership. $1.9 million. Yeah, you heard that right. That's the maximum civil penalty per violation category per year you face if a low-cost developer misses a critical HIPAA technical safeguard before launch. A cheap initial build suddenly becomes incredibly expensive when HHS comes knocking at your door. How about $16,000? That is the potential fine for a single violation if your trucking app just displays hours of service instead of actually enforcing them in the code. If your developer doesn't fundamentally understand FMCSA regulations, your company assumes all of that legal liability. No thank you.
There's a really clear pattern here across all these industries. Features that aren't built into the initial architecture always cost so much more to retrofit later on. A low-cost oilfield app fails offline, and boom, you need a total rebuild. A low-cost SaaS app misses enterprise single sign-on and completely fails corporate procurement. Doing it right from Sprint 1 with a true product engineering mindset saves months of delays and massive retrofit costs down the line.
Which brings us to our final section. Section 5, your decision framework. How we actually move forward. So, with all those risks out on the table, let's lock this down with a bulletproof checklist for your final vendor selection. First things first, you've got to know exactly who you're hiring. Houston enterprises deploying apps with real safety or operational consequences? You must partner with product engineering companies, not just large IT staff augmentation firms. You need a partner who builds complex, offline-first products by default and asks really deep, domain-specific operational questions before they ever hand you a price tag. Here's a golden rule for you. Never, ever accept a fixed price estimate without doing a paid discovery sprint first. This is a 1 to 3 week phase that completely de-risks the project. It hands you the actual architectural blueprint and a fully fleshed out product requirements document. If a vendor just throws a price at you without this deep discovery phase, it's a wild guess. It is not an engineering assessment. So here are your non-negotiables. Any trusted app developer in Houston has to meet these standards today. Demand exact stack names. Require specific regulatory citations. Ensure they're testing against the OWASP Mobile Top 10 vulnerabilities. And verify they fully understand enterprise SSO. Seriously, don't settle for, oh yeah, we can do that. Demand to know exactly how they do it. As we wrap this explainer up, I want you to take this one defining question into your next vendor evaluation. Does your development partner build for presentations or do they build for Houston? In an environment where software failure is a massive operational liability, you simply can't afford to get it wrong. So take a hard look at your current vendor shortlist. Are you looking at pitchmen or are you looking at actual product engineers?